In 1942, the Nazi Gestapo issued an urgent, frantic dispatch across occupied France. She is the most dangerous of all Allied spies. We must find her. We must destroy the woman with the limp. They didn't know her name. They didn't know she was a wealthy debutante from Baltimore. And they certainly didn't expect that the greatest threat to the Third Reich's hold on Lyon was a woman missing a leg carrying a wireless radio across the Pyrenees Mountains. This is not a myth. This is the cold, hard, and breathtaking history of Virginia Hall. Chapter 1. The Baltimore Belle and the Hunting Accident. Virginia was never meant to be a spy. Born in 1906 to a wealthy Maryland family, her life was mapped out in the ballrooms of Baltimore and the finishing schools of Europe. She was tall, athletic, and possessed a razor-sharp intellect that intimidated the young men of her social circle. While her mother dreamed of a prestigious marriage, Virginia dreamed of the Foreign Service. But the 1930s were a bleak time for ambitious women. The U.S. State Department was an old boys' club, and despite her fluency in French, German, and Italian, Virginia was relegated to clerical work in Warsaw and Izmir. Then disaster struck, or so it seemed. During a snipe hunting trip in Turkey, Virginia stumbled. Her shotgun discharged, blasting her left leg below the knee. In the 1930s, such an injury was often a death sentence via gangrene. Surgeons saved her life, but they had to amputate. For most, this would be the end of an adventurous career. Virginia, with a grim sense of humor, named her new wooden prosthetic Cuthbert and learned to walk with a barely noticeable gait. The State Department used the injury as an excuse to block her career, citing a rule against amputees in the diplomatic corps. Little did they know, their rejection would send her straight into the arms of the British Special Operations Executive, WEO. Chapter 4. The Butcher's Noose. By late 1942, the air in Lyon had turned cold and toxic. The Nazi occupation of the Free Zone was no longer a threat, it was a reality. Klaus Barbie, the infamous Butcher of Lyon, had turned the city into a giant trap. He was a man who enjoyed the scent of blood, and he was frustrated. His prey, the elusive, limping lady, was making a mockery of the Gestapo. Virginia felt the walls closing in. Her primary contact, a priest who had been helping her hide downed Allied pilots, was arrested and tortured. Under the weight of a hot iron, he broke. The Gestapo now had a description that matched her too closely. "We have to move," Virginia told her team, in a damp cellar beneath a bakery. But moving was getting harder. Cuthbert, her wooden leg, was chafing against her stump, causing open sores that bled through her stockings. Every step was an agony of friction and grit. In November 1942, the word came down. The borders were closing. The Germans were flooding the South. Virginia's only way out was south, toward the jagged, frozen teeth of the Pyrenees Mountains, the natural wall between France and Spain. Chapter 5. The Long Walk on One Leg. The trek across the Pyrenees is a feat that challenges Olympic athletes. For a woman with a prosthetic leg made of wood and leather in the dead of winter, it was a suicide mission. She hired a guide who didn't know who she was, only that she was a reporter who needed to get to Spain. They climbed for days through waist-deep snow. The temperature dropped so low that the moisture from their breath froze onto their scarves. Virginia's stump was raw, the skin torn away by the constant shifting of the heavy prosthetic. At one point, she managed to send a frantic wireless message back to her handlers at the SOE in London. "Cuthbert is giving me trouble," she signaled, referring to her leg. The response from London, sent by a desk officer who didn't understand the code, was infamously dense. "If Cuthbert is troublesome, have him eliminated." Virginia reportedly laughed despite the pain. If only it were that simple to eliminate a missing limb. She reached the 7,500-foot summit by sheer force of will, dragging Cuthbert through the drifts.
When she finally crossed into Spain, she wasn't greeted with a hero's welcome. She was arrested by Spanish authorities for not having a valid visa. It took weeks of secret diplomatic maneuvering for the British to get her out of a Spanish jail and back to London. Chapter 6. The Return of the Madonna. Most people, after surviving the Gestapo and a mountain trek on one leg, would have taken a desk job. Not Virginia Hall. She was frustrated with the British SOE. They refused to send her back because she was too burned. Her face was on every wanted poster in France. So she turned to her own countrymen. She joined the newly formed Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, the precursor to the CIA. The Americans were less gentlemanly and more desperate. They needed someone who knew the terrain. In 1944,